This regular meeting of the Detroit Lakes City Council is called to order, and at this time I'd like to invite all of you to please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The regular agenda is before the council. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to make any changes to the regular agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the regular agenda as presented. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The consent agendas before the council and all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to either remove or add an item to the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for its approval.
So moved. Motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as printed. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes of the regular city council meeting held June 13th and the special meeting held June 20th, 2023 are before the council. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to make any changes to the minutes of the printed? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for their approval.
I so move for both minutes. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 13th and a special meeting held June 20th. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. At this time, we have two new part-time police officers here this evening, and I'd like to ask Ethan and Jaron to come up to the podium and we'll swear you in. When you guys are done, will you sign?
They already did.
Oh, they already signed up?
Yep.
So, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your names.
I, Jerron Ashton,
Promise that I will humbly serve
promise that I will humbly serve
all residents with a response to their crisis
all residents with response to their crisis
with compassion, sincerity, and concern,
with compassion, sincerity, and concern,
patience, kindness, and respect.
patience, kindness, and respect.
I promise that I will at all times
Promise that I will at all times
conduct myself in a manner
conduct myself in a manner
that reflects positively
that reflects positively
on the Detroit Lakes Police Department and the City of Detroit Lakes.
on the Detroit Lakes Police Department and the City of Detroit Lakes.
Finally, I promise to follow
Finally, I promise to follow
the policies of the Detroit Lakes Police Department,
policies of the Detroit Lakes Police Department,
uphold the laws of our state and nation,
uphold the laws of our state and nation,
and the ordinances of the City of Detroit Lakes,
and the ordinance of the City of Detroit Lakes,
and that I will faithfully discharge my duties
and I will faithfully discharge my duties
to the best of my abilities, so help me God.
to the best of my abilities, so help me God.
It's good to have you. Congratulations. I asked if they wanted to introduce any families. So
Yes, I could.
if you would.
My wife Amanda, Olden, Michaela, then Chandler, Ella, Parker, and then the little guy Eric. Hi Eric. That's my family.
My grandma, mom, and brother. Dad unfortunately couldn't make it, duty calls, so.
Thanks again. We have a representative for the West Central Initiative. Samantha's here, and I'm not going to butcher her last name, so if you would introduce yourself with your last name, that gets me off the hook.
Yes, I told him he was off. Samantha Van Wetschel-Meyer.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm here from West Central Initiative. In 2019, Rebecca Peterson visited and got a round of applause. And she's visited ever since with you because she's just always enjoyed that moment so much. So she's sad not to be here with you this evening. She was originally planning to come but had something come up. So I'm happy to be here in her absence. So first, I just want to thank you all for your ongoing support of West Central Initiative. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We serve 2 different roles for West Central Minnesota region, the 9 counties that we serve. And that's a Regional Community Foundation and a Regional Development Organization. So I'm going to share just a little bit about how we serve in those 2 roles. And I know many of you know a bit about West Central Initiative because you've been on boards with us or are a part of a component fund that we work with. So thank you for that work as well. So our work is predominantly in economic and community development. And under those 2 hats that we wear, we do different programs in the Regional Development Organization role through our loans program. So since January 1st of 2022, there have been 6 loans that have gone to your community, totaling $379,000. And under that role as a regional development organization, we are able to pass through state and federal funding as well, and that's an important role that we were missing as a region for a period of time until West Central Initiative took it on. And a little bit of history on that is in the small handout in your packet, so if you're curious about that role that we play, you can read more about it there. But we do serve that role of putting state and federal funds through into our region. And then also in that regional development role, we have planners on staff, so we serve many roles such as transportation planning in our region as well. In our role as a regional community foundation, we have our component fund program, and your community is so philanthropic and generous in supporting many things that you have going on. And it's exciting to see and exciting to work with folks in your community on those programs. So many component funds, and those groups work with West Central Initiative. We serve as the 501c3, and that extends to those groups so that their donors can get tax receipts for their gifts. And then we also provide administrative support to those groups. So we do the audit and 990 and billing for pledges and those tax receipts and various things. So that's a bit on that role that we play in our Regional Community Foundation. Under your component fund group, your various component funds, there have been since January 1st of 2022, $339,205.11 of grants awarded in your community. So that's just since January 1st of 2022. So that shows the impact of those groups and what they're doing for your community. In that same time period, January 1st of 2022, there have been a total, and this includes those component fund grants, a total of 67 grants awarded in your community that total just over $507,000. So that those other various grants fell under our work and early childhood initiatives, which are also in our Regional Community Foundation role. We have an early childhood initiative coordinator serving in the county here. And we've been talking a lot about those component funds on your handout here. It does share the different component funds that we're working with. And I saw a most recent addition is missing. So the Early Care and Development Foundation of Becker County is also working with West Central Initiative in that capacity. And I'm sure you're aware of their group. So yes, a lot of great projects happening. And then I'm just going to take a minute to share a little bit about a new program that we're working on, which is our Rural Democracy Program. And Celeste Coffey from your community, I'm sure many of you know her, is leading that program. On the left-hand side of your folder, there is a handout about the Rural Democracy Program. So you've maybe heard some on that. This year is a little bit more to answer what's going on with that. And there's kind of a two-limb approach to it. So part of it is to support people who are currently serving in leadership roles, such as council members, mayors, city staff to have a network that helps support you as you serve in those roles and gain skills. The other approach is that you may not want to be on council forever, and we want to bring up the next generation of leaders for our communities. So it's helping folks who are interested in serving in a leadership role to gain skills to do that in the future. So there's information here. If you know of anybody who would be a good fit to be a leader in your community, feel free to share this with them. All of the program and services are free, and that's funded through a grant that we applied for. Just a couple things I maybe forgot. Also in the folder on the left-hand side is our flyer on our loans program. So we do gap financing is a big part of our role as a regional development organization in our economic development work. So folks that maybe are looking to start or expand a business that don't receive enough funding from the bank, send them our way. We're happy to help. That flyer again can be shared with the community. You don't have to keep it for yourselves. We also tend to take on a little bit riskier loans as well. If the bank says no, you could also send them our way, and we may consider helping them as well. And then Jackie Boobles, I'm sure you all know Jackie, is on our board at West Central Initiative. So you've got her ear. So if you ever need anything from us, feel free to talk to Jackie or give us a call at any time. And then Mr. Zeman here previously served on our Economic Development District Board, so thank you for that service. And Jackie, I think, is currently serving in that role as well as being on the board. So we have a lot going on. I'm happy to answer any questions while I'm here this evening, or contact us at any point. And if you have anything going on that you'd see as a good fit for what we might be able to help you with, I'm happy to take questions back to our team as well.
Any questions tonight for Samantha? Council?
Well, I just want to say that you certainly have been good for our neighborhood, and when your membership comes up every year, I'm just reminded when we say, should we go ahead and keep going on this, and when you tell us these numbers, absolutely, you're a great organization. We're lucky to have you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Samantha, thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Without objection, I'd like to move to item 7A on the Finance Committee agenda. Chairman Josephson.
Yeah, so 7A is something that, it's not usually mostly all that fun to talk about, but we've got our auditor here, Andy Grice, to talk to us about our audit and what last year's finances look like.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, for having me here tonight to present the audit results for the year ended December 31st, 2022. Our role as your auditor is to provide assurance on the city's financial statements. That the financial statements that you're looking at here tonight are fairly stated in all material respects. We do that through our audit opinion, and we are issuing a clean audit opinion or an unmodified opinion, and that's the best that we can give as your auditor. We also report on government auditing standards, and that report talks about our consideration of internal control over financial reporting. We're required to report any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control that we note as part of our audit procedures. And we had one finding related to a lack of segregation of accounting duties. That finding is not uncommon for a city of your size, but it is something for City Council to remain aware of. We also issued our report on the uniform guidance. We did perform a single audit on 3 major federal programs. We took a look at the Drinking Water Revolving Funds, American Rescue Plan funds, as well as the Federal Highway Grant. And we've looked at compliance with those federal programs, as well as internal control over those federal programs. We did issue a clean, unmodified opinion over compliance with those programs, and we had no internal control findings to report. Lastly, we issue our report on Minnesota legal compliance, where we take a look at certain state statutes required by the Office of the State Auditor. That includes the city's deposits and investments, conflicts of interest, the city's contracting and bidding activities, and other miscellaneous provisions, and we had no findings to report on Minnesota legal compliance. The other report that we issue is our communications letter that includes all other required audit communications as well as our financial analysis, which does give some trend data of the city's finances here over the last 5 years. And we'll start here by taking a look at general fund revenues. And here in 2022, there was an increase in revenues of about 4.5%. General fund revenues increased $287,000. The largest increase was in taxes, with the increase in tax levy. That increased $327,000, or about 8%. The other areas that did have a fluctuation, one was miscellaneous revenue, which increased about $182,000. That was due to receiving a refund on workers' compensation premium, as well as property insurance claims reimbursements there, which was offset by a negative market value adjustments related to the poor market conditions that are related to the city's investments. The next chart shows the allocation of general fund revenues by source. Taxes continue to be the major or the majority of revenue sources here for the general fund, about 63% here for 2022 compared to 60% there in the prior year, followed by intergovernmental revenues, which made up 24% of general fund revenues, consistent with 2021. The next chart shows general fund expenditures here over the last 5 years. And there was an increase in expenditures of about 7%. They increased from $6.7 million up to about $7.2 million at the end of the year. There was 2 areas that did experience some significant increases, one being public works. That area increased $354,000 due to increasing costs, snowy winter, as well as an additional employee in that area with an increase in wages and benefits. Public safety also experienced an increase. That area increased about $254,000 with an increase in wages and benefits, as well as some incidents that occurred this year, train derailment and some additional overtime costs in that area. When it comes to the allocation of general fund expenditures by function, public safety continues to be the largest component of general fund expenditures, making up about 40% of general fund expenditures, followed by public works at 32%, general government at about 15%, and culture and recreation at about 12%. The next chart shows general fund budget to actual results. And the budget that City Council adopted called for about $6.3 million in revenue, about $7 million in expenditures, and net transfers in from other funds of about $685,000. And there was no change in fund balance that was anticipated here for 2022. Actual revenues and other financing sources came in better than anticipated by about 8%. The main driver there was the intergovernmental category. The variance that you're seeing there is the result of the spending of the American Rescue Plan dollars, and that was not part of the adopted budget, but portion of those funds were expended here in 2022. Expenditures were over budget by about $214,000, or about 3%. In various categories here. As we mentioned, there were some increases there in public safety and public works, with some additional hours worked here for 2022. The next chart shows the general fund operations here over the last 5 years, with total revenues, total expenditures, and fund balance. And with the positive operations in the general fund, there was an increase in fund balance, increasing from $6.5 million to about $6.9 million at the end of the year. And that's total fund balance. There are amounts that are assigned for specific purposes, and the city does have a fund balance policy in place related to the unassigned portion of fund balance. And the unassigned portion of fund balance for 2022 was at $4.3 million. The city's policy is to maintain a minimum unassigned fund balance between 35 and 50% of the subsequent year's budget. And using the 2023 budget expenditures, that unassigned portion of fund balance was at 53.8%. So the city is in compliance with its policy. The next chart is the electric fund operations, and this is the start of an evaluation of the city's enterprise funds, and these operate like a business in that it does provide a service to residents of the city here, and the goal of these funds is to be able to cover the cost of providing that service. And first we'll take a look at the electric fund. Operating revenues in the electric fund increased about 3.5%, and that was due to an increase in electric sales. There was also a refund that occurred here in 2022, also part of that increase there. Operating expenses decreased by about $511,000 or 3%. There was some electric meter changes in the prior year, and so we did see a decrease in that area. And ultimately, that did lead to a surplus or operating income for the year of about $4.1 million, which resulted in an increase in the unrestricted net position of about $1.2 million, and ending the year at $21.2 million in unrestricted net position. Next is the water fund. Operating revenues in the water fund increased by about 5%. There was an increase in rates, offset by some decreases in sales. Operating expenses increased by $355,000 or about 15%. Majority of that related to the water replacement, meter replacement project that began back in 2020. That was on pause for a bit there in 2021, waiting on some nodes as part of that project, and that resumed here in 2022, which drove some of that increase. The operations for the year resulted in an operating income of about $390,000, increasing the unrestricted net position from $1.3 million to $2.5 million. Next is the wastewater fund. The wastewater fund did experience an increase in operating revenues of just $1,000, so fairly flat from the prior year. Operating expenses increased $589,000. There was a vacancy and an additional employee that was hired there. There was also some chemicals for wastewater treatment that also contributed to that increase. As a result, operating income for the year was about $1 million, with an increase in the unrestricted net position from $9.8 million to $11.6 million. Last, we have the liquor fund operations. The gross profit in the liquor fund increased by about $127,000 or about 5.5%, and that was due to an increase in sales. As a result, we also saw an increase in operating expenses and related cost of goods sold. The gross profit percentage increased slightly, went from about 26.9% to 27.7% here in 2022. And there was an increase in that unrestricted net position, going from about $4 million to about $4.3 million at the end of the year. That's a high-level review of our audit results as well as the financial analysis, and next we'd just like to open it up for any questions.
Any questions for Andy about the audit? Andy, we appreciate you coming and thank you for the report.
Thank you for having me.
Without objection, I'd like to move to,
Do you want to do
oh, I suppose we'd have a motion to approve it.
So item 7A is the approval of the 2022 audit report. Finance Committee reviewed this afternoon. We got a longer presentation, which, you know, had this been done sooner, it could have been part of the State of the City address back in January.
Absolutely.
They are pretty thorough, but we reviewed it, recommend approval, and I so move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the 2022 audit report. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Without objection, I'd like to move to the Public Works Committee, item 6E, Chairman Zeman.
Okay, item 6E is a consideration to a special event application for the Lakes Area Boxing Association on August 19, 2023. And what this would involve in is blocking off part of North Washington Avenue. And we had discussion on this, but when we left it yesterday, Sean, you were going to check with the county and see what their thoughts were about closing off that stretch of highway in Washington Avenue.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I did check with the county and they are opposed to us closing down Washington for that one block because of the time of day and being the weekend. It is a main thoroughfare for that north side of town.
Hearing that, Matt, are you here?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you come up to the podium and then, yesterday we discussed about, some other options. One was, the parking lot behind the old newspaper office, and you mentioned the Danny Service Center and so forth. And you had other thoughts about where you might want to move this to?
Actually, we talked about it last night after we discussed it, and then I visited with Sean this morning to see if they had talked with the county. And Chris and I decided that with what we really want to create up there as a community event, to tuck it away and down a side street, we're getting closer to the residential. That's not gonna help us out. Dan Service is interested, we're not sure if that's quite a big enough area, things of that nature. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna table it on ourselves here a little bit and go to come up a little more planning, as we're getting kind of tight in there anyway on those dates, and see if we can't work with the county on it for a later date, and see if there's something that we can come up with there. So we appreciate hearing it, and Sean, your work on working with the county. And I think in discussion yesterday that we would have the support of the city on it if the county were in support of it. And so we're gonna try to work with those guys and see if we can come up with something that everybody can be proud of and what we were trying to create.
Okay,
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So without objection, we'll just table that, Ron.
We'll just table that for now, yes.
Without objection by the council, I'd like to move to the Community Development Committee agenda, item 5C. Sean, Chairman Carlson.
Actually, it would be Chairman Bogie. I'll take that
It's
one.
going to be Chairman Bogie.
Item 5C, consideration of the first reading of ordinance 514 to give consideration to amending the section 13 of zoning ordinance to allow funeral homes as a permitted use and crematorium as a conditional use in the B3 auto-oriented business district and section 2 of the zoning ordinance regarding definitions. So basically what's that saying is, and discussed last night at the CDC, this would be the first reading to change the ordinance and allow crematoriums within the B3 auto district. That does not give permission to a business to install them, it just gives them permission to apply since we're changing the ordinance. Last night we had discussion at CDC about this at length. We are going to go forward with a positive recommendation, as that was the recommendation of Planning Council or Planning Commission as well. So I would move this forward.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I know there's some folks here this evening that are interested in this item. Does anyone in the audience wish to make any comments this evening? Yes, if you'd come to the podium and if we could have your name and address for our minutes, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm Lynn Drews. I am a nurse here in town. I would oppose this for a couple different reasons. Number one, we live in Lakes Country. This is what we pride ourselves on. This is what we care about, our lakes, our streams, and the fish that come out of there. And this would be a pollutant to our surrounding area. I'm not sure if the Pelican River watershed has been notified. They should. The creek is right back there. This would increase traffic. This would increase pollution into our community, which is not good for our elderly. It would not be good for children, people with asthma, pregnant women due to birth defects. So there's no great reason to have one here in town. They do own one very closely that they can bring that our deceased there. The garage here in town is not large enough to be respectful to the community or to the buildings next door or to the deceased. The building that they're talking about is not large enough to back a vehicle in, close the door, and respectfully take a deceased body out of a vehicle without others seeing that. That should not be seen by the community. And that is where that's my view, and a lot of people in the community would not like to see one in our town just because of all the pollution. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to make a comment? If not, I would ask if there was any. Oh, go ahead, sir.
James Beaton, General Manager of David Donahauer Funeral Home, and we are the funeral home considering putting in a crematory retort. I can state that Ms. Drew's claims on pollution are absolutely not substantiated by the research that we have done and by the company that we are using to put this equipment together. There has been a tremendous amount of research done on pollution. That is not a factor. I have personally spoken with both of our neighbors that are business owners, one being a bank, one being a recreational vehicle dealer. They are both completely in support of our project. I think it's worthwhile to note that we are currently traveling to Fergus Falls to conduct cremation, 40 miles one way. We're traveling there 4 to 5 days a week in all kinds of weather at a great cost to the consumer. So we do not have a near enough facility that we feel this is the right thing for us to do for our community When David Donauer Funeral Home was built in 2012, the new facility, the cremation rate in this community was under 40%. Last year in 2022, the cremation rate for David Donauer crested 80%. For our company, which is David Donauer, West Chose Funeral Home, and Fury Funeral Home, we are currently seeing 70% cremation rate. So 70% of the families that call us are choosing cremation. So we are listening to the families that are calling on us, and we feel that it is in the best interest of those families that that service can be provided right here in this community. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
One of the questions I have, I know you have 2 funeral homes here in Detroit Lakes. Are you planning to use just for those 2, or are you going to be accepting cremations from other places around our area of the state?
Our main function is to... No, our main function would be to conduct cremations for the 3 funeral homes that I manage here in this area. Schonenberger Funeral Home in Perham is also a firm that's owned by our company. I could potentially see them using us for cremation, but we are not looking at serving a great distance because due to the sheer volume of cremations that David Donauer conducts, we don't really have the ability to serve too many more than that. We need to just be able to take care of our own and do so in a dignified manner.
No, I know there's many companies that make these equipment for this, and I'm wondering about stages and so forth, so we don't have the pollution with either the smoke or the smell. And I'm just wondering, how many cases can this do without getting to that level to do it where you have to make sure you got the proper size for the amount of bodies you're going to cremate?
Well, there's really only one size. For the company that we're using is Matthews. To my knowledge, there are 3 producers of cremation units in the United States. Matthews is the largest. We have many Matthews crematoriums in use within our company. So one crematory retort can only conduct so many cremations. The cremation process probably takes about 2 to 4 hours, depending on a wide variety of variables. So we do not run 24 hours a day because these are operated by people. So we couldn't feasibly conduct more than 500 or 600 cremations a year. David Donauer and my group of funeral homes here, we are presently serving about 350 families. Quick math, 70%, about 210 to 250 of those are cremations. So we're well within the capabilities of the machine at that number. I would anticipate that Schonenberger, perhaps Olson Funeral Home in Pelican would come to us. Those firms are not anywhere near the size of David Donauer, so we would still be well under the 500 or 600 a year that the machine could do. And we're not looking to push the machine to its limits. Our main function here is to make sure that the people of Detroit Lakes and our surrounding communities are not being shuttled needlessly 40 miles in inclement weather to Fergus Falls and keeping that service to our families right here in town.
Any further questions from the council or discussion?
Mayor, just to point out once again, this is just the first reading to change the ordinance. This is not granting permission to install a crematorium at this time. That would be a separate application.
Sean?
There was some discussion yesterday about the performance of the retorts, the potentially particulates, odors, things like this. I know when we spoke, maybe you could speak to that a little bit, and then I might have a follow-up.
So as far as emissions, they are very, very, very nominal. Just like your home furnaces and your home boilers, all that you will see for emissions coming out of this machine is a white steam, and you're only going to see that at certain temperatures. But there is no discharge of ash, there is no discharge of any appreciable particulate matter because it is reclaimed so many times throughout the mechanism. Before that air finally expels, there is just very little in there, and there would be no ash to speak of.
Follow up?
I do. Ron, you had mentioned yesterday, questions about the quality of the retort that's put in and those types of things and the costs. And item I4 under the conditional use reads, all equipment shall be installed and maintained in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions, including preventative maintenance and procedures for periodic performance tests to ensure the systems are operating properly, which based on our conversations, I'm confident is something you do. There was some discussion about, how do we enforce that? How do we look at that? What happens if there is a complaint? So I would move to amend the motion to add to item I4 the statement, and a copy of the results provided to the city annually.
Is there a second to the amendment?
I'd second that.
Okay. We'll vote on the amendment first. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment carries. We will vote, but I want to allow a little more discussion if there is any from the council.
What is the useful life of those retorts as your crematory?
Well, I mean, they can last for 30 or 40 years if they're maintained properly. The inside of the machine is all lined with brick, and that does have to be replaced after so many hours of being in use. So that's checked on at least a biannual basis by a representative from Matthews. Matthews is all over the United States with these retorts. So they will come out and conduct an inspection and tell us how good the inner workings of the machine are and if they are ready for upgrading. And if so, we do that. If you don't do that, if you don't do what they say, you can't leave the check engine light on and keep going. They'll just stop running. So the machine has to be maintained to a very high standard. The world we live in today, the machine is run this way. So because of that, all the data, every time the machine is started or stopped, all that data goes to Matthews. Matthews is a national corporation. They don't monkey around. So that machine is monitored by us and our staff remotely. If, I wouldn't maybe be there, but someone would be there monitoring the machine. But the data also goes to Matthews. So many, many fail-safes in place. This machine would not be able to run if it were not up to the standard that Matthews has set forth.
So do the emissions change as the life of the machine increases?
Not really, because the maintenance is ongoing. So I mean, there probably wouldn't be a great deal of maintenance in the first year or two because the machine is fairly new. But the maintenance is ongoing, and just like an automobile or just like your home furnace or boiler, everything that needs to be changed is changed in accordance with the schedule of operation. And in this case, it's hours that it's running. So it doesn't really matter, well, we've done 50 cremations. No, it's so many hours because some cremations will take shorter time periods than others. So it's really based on hours of operation and the heat that the machine is taking to conduct the cremations.
Okay. Do you know what the chamber heat is of both the first chamber and second chamber?
It would be, the high would be 1800 degrees, but a typical is 1600 to 1650.
Okay. Sir, you understood the amended motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any further comments? Yes,
I would like to make a comment if I could.
Come on up, please. And again, if we could have your name and address for our minutes.
Tim Schnitzer, and I live on Long Avenue, which is right south. Long Avenue is on the other side of the river, which is on the other side of this property. And my thought is in regards to the zoning, you're talking about vehicle zoning or something like that, automobile. But a couple hundred feet to the south is residential apartments like crazy, just filled with people. And like was mentioned before, the river part. So I just want you to consider maybe a different place in town would be something to consider in that regard. Get it away from people, maybe an industrial park or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just respond to that briefly, I do want to point out that it does state in the conditional use permit that the crematorium must be located at least 300 feet from any class of residential district. So there is a distance requirement that if we approve the ordinance, that still has to go, that still must apply to the conditional use.
Okay, this is the first reading, so we'll have another bite at the apple. Go ahead with it.
Mr. Stone?
James Beaton.
Sorry about that. Frequent things. I just wanted to respond to, you cited the company that builds the furnaces
Yes.
and their requirements. Our ordinance also includes that all design, operating, and licensing requirements for appropriate federal, state, and local agencies are met. So in that process, I mean, you are subject to those kinds of regulations as well.
Of course.
It's not just this company who's...
No, absolutely not.
I assumed as much, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay.
One final. So, the closest one is in Fergus Falls, correct?
Correct.
That's in Glendy, Nelson Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, that's basically it's kind of commercial, but it's also very close to residential.
Right.
And there's no issues down there?
There have never been any issues there. You can literally stand on the sidewalk in front of the funeral home and look up at the stack, and there have never been any issues, ever. And that's an old machine. That machine is near 30 years old, so imagine the technology that's available today. So I think we can all agree, if you've had the opportunity to go into David Donahauer Funeral Home, that it's a first-class facility. And my company makes first-class investments. And so we're going to continue to do that for the people that patronize us. And so if we are permitted to move forward with this crematory project, it's going to be done with all the class and character that our original building was done with. Because we don't want to do it again, number one. And number two, as it's not how Burton does business. Burton is a first-class company. Burton also owns the funeral home in Fergus Falls. So,
my point was just that we're talking about zoning. It hasn't been an issue in kind of quasi-residential commercial districts in the past. We'll have this fight again when bring your proposal forward. But I'm in favor of the zoning change.
All right, are you prepared to vote? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries, and first reading is given to ordinance 514.
Say, Mayor?
Yes.
Can I interject? When we did the swearing in of the officers, we do have 2 resolutions that may be approved on a 4B.
Oh, yeah. Okay, without objection, somebody want to take this?
Okay, item 1, consideration resolution declaring the position of part-time police officer meets all the para membership requirements recommended, and I so move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution declaring the position for Ethan Wolfe that it meets all the PERA membership requirements. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 2, consideration resolution declaring the position of part-time police officer meets the para membership requirements for Darren. I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution declaring the position for Jared Ashnowitz that meets all PERA membership requirements. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries. Is there anyone else in the audience that I can adjust an item so you don't have to sit here for the entire meeting? Anyone else? I'd be glad to do it. If not, we'll go right back to the top, which is the beginning of the Community Development Committee. Chairman Volpe.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item 5A, consideration of the second reading and adoption of ordinance 507 to the amendment to the zoning ordinance to add section 10A neighborhood commercial district. This is the second reading. This did pass CDC with unanimous support, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to give second reading and adopt ordinance 507. Is there any discussion by the council? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
There's 2 nays, so that gives us 5 positive votes. So second reading is given and ordinance 507 is adopted.
Who was the other name?
Dr. Drain?
Thank you, Your Honor. Item 5B, consideration of the second reading and adoption of ordinance 513 for the rezoning of 1150 US Highway 59 from RA agriculture to RM multifamily residential. This was discussed at planning. This was also discussed last night at CDC with unanimous recommendation, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to give second reading and adopt ordinance 513. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Second reading is given and ordinance 513 is adopted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Moving down to 5D, consideration of the resolution approving the final plat for Dandrew Place at 609 Terry Street. This was discussed last night at CDC. There were no issues were brought up with it, and we all were in unanimous decision, so I would move this forward.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the final plat of Dandrew Place. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Anything else, Ben?
That's all, Your Honor.
We'll go to the Public Works Committee, Chairman Zeno.
Okay, the first item is 6A, was for discussion, was regarding the implementation of a 2-hour parking zone on Washington Avenue. We had a lot of discussion on this, and what we kind of came out and said we're going to try to get all the businesses together, send out notification, because we know who the people are that are causing the problem. A lot of it's the business owners themselves, and also people that maybe live in the apartments. So we've got to get this figured out, because we have done the 2-hour parking zone before here in Detroit Lakes, but it's a matter of enforcement on all this stuff, and it would almost take a full-time police officer just to be downtown to enforce this. And we did that one time. We had a meter maid at one time and tried it for a summer, and then they did not continue because it just didn't work out on it. But we're going to have a meeting with the businesses and try to get this thing worked out a little bit better on it for that. So that was for the discussion part. Next is item 6B, consideration of second reading of adoption of ordinance 512, amending the city code section of 604, transit merchants, peddlers, hawks, and the solicitors. And basically what this is, we had a license that was for like a 6-month, or you could get a longer one. We're going to move everything to a 12-month license going forward. And the committee recommends an ISO move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to give second reading and adopt ordinance 512. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Second reading is given and ordinance 512 is adopted.
Okay, item 6C, this is consideration to rejecting bids for a 2023 street rehab project on South West Shore Drive Estates, and also utility project and the Willow Spring Street project. And I'll call on John Pratt to tell us why the reasoning for this.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. We took bids last Thursday for the 2023 street rehabilitation project, which included a variety of streets around town for pavement restoration, primarily through a full-depth reclamation process. So unfortunately, we received only one bid on that project. I think it's fairly indicative of the bidding climate right now. Contractors are very full, particularly paving contractors. And so we received one bid. That bid, unfortunately, was about 40% over our estimated costs. And our recommendation is to reject the bid in this case, and then we would rebid the project. Sometime this winter would be one option, is rebidding the exact same project. Another option would be to potentially combine it with some additional light work that we have tentatively placed in the capital improvement plan and bid a larger project. But in either case, do that this winter when the bidding climate is probably a little more favorable. So.
And I'm going to say we know there's a lot of street work that needs to get done yet, but when it's at $1 million overpriced, we just have to wait and try to get the best pricing. We want to try to get the best bang we can for our tax dollars, and we'll get those streets fixed hopefully sooner than later. But the committee recommends to reject this bid, and I so move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to reject the bids for the 2023 street rehabilitation project. Discussion?
I think it's disappointing, and I know I've talked to some of my neighbors at Willow Springs. Dr. Shawnee's going to see about getting treatment to knock down dust to get us through this year, but that cost is just untenable, and I do hope that we can do better this winter. And maybe to your point, combining a larger project with a better bidding climate would be beneficial for the city and all its residents, despite the fact that we have to delay it. So thank you for the work and stuff you've done on that.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Item 6D is consideration to a resolution adopting an accepted report of setting public hearing on the abatement of diseased trees. And I'll call on Sean to give a report on that.
Mayor and Council, this is just our annual tree survey. John and his crew go out and they check the whole city for diseased and potentially dangerous trees. And after that, we supply a list of them said trees and to set a hearing for next month.
Okay, and look, there's a lot of addresses on that list, but I'm surprised that we still have a lot of elm trees to get rid of, so. But anyway, the committee recommends for the resolution accepting this report and setting a public hearing for next month, and I so move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to accept the public hearing for the diseased trees for next month. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is after accepting the city engineer's monthly report, and he's got some good news for us on West Lake Drive.
We do, Mayor and Council, a fair amount of progress and work on a number of projects over the course of the last month, probably most notably Westlake Drive. Very, very happy to report that as of yesterday evening, that roadway on phase 1 has been opened permanently. So it's paved, it's striped, there are some signs that need to be installed yet. Those will be going up Thursday. They'll be in picking up the traffic control and things like that. Outside of that, there's some very minor cleanup items and some turf maintenance, and that project is all but done at that point. Really the same is true with phase 2, which has continued to be open this spring, but they've effectively finished all of the work in there. There was a little bit of turf restoration to complete. They got that wrapped up, I think that was earlier this week. So that project also is basically done. Willow Homes and Frazee Street, there remains just a few complete items that the contractor needs to address in there, and then we can issue final payment on that. Longpine Estates, Ware Course is on that. Again, that's 99% complete. We'll be close to issuing a final payment on that. Also, the Becker County Museum DLCC parking lot, that one, the original parking lot got its overlay completed here late last week. So that project is done again outside of a few minor items that need to be wrapped up. Conversely, we're getting rolling on the Campbell Avenue and Linden Lane project. That one's probably in the 10 to 15% finished category. So really just getting into the heat of that one. Work began very late June and will extend deep into the fall, would be my suspicion on that. So just getting going on that, mostly on Campbell Avenue right now, but work will be starting on Linden Lane here sometime in the next week or two. Summit Avenue, street and utility reconstruction, we had a pre-construction meeting on that last week, and I expect work to begin on that towards the end of this month, early part of August. Probably the most notable thing on that right now is just that we will have the intersection of Holmes and Summit closed. There's a pretty good amount of traffic through that area, so that'll cause just a little bit of interruption to traffic in that area. Again, that'll last a good portion of the rest of the construction season. Terry Street Dander subdivision work has begun on that project. As of right now, we've only awarded the base bid, which is the Terry Street sewer and water improvements, just getting sewer and water service to the food pantry. We anticipate awarding the alternate portion of that bid, which is the Dander subdivision. We anticipate awarding that as soon as we can get a development agreement executed with the developer. At this point, we expect that any day, and so that work will be able to be completed. The remaining 3 items, the street rehabilitation, Willow Springs, and Southwood Shore Estates, those were all contained in the bid that that we just discussed, and we're projecting those, and we'll retool on that this winter. So, any questions?
Yeah, I was going to just say that one thing that was brought up that you're maybe considering, because that Holmes and the Summit intersection is so highly trafficked, we've had a number of accidents, that you were mentioning that it might be a possibility of having a 4-way stop there. Have you done any more thinking on that, or?
Yeah, well, between yesterday and today, not significant. We'll dive into the crash history on that a little bit, give that some further evaluation, and my intent would be to bring that back to Public Works next month.
Okay, thank you. And then also I wanted to mention when John talked about that nice new parking lot in Rosema and the LCC, and that's all because of our food and beverage tax. That's who paid the bill on that, and it's a nice parking lot.
True story, yes.
And with that, I'm I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept the Johnstown project report.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the city engineer's monthly project status report. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
That's all the other.
Dan, is there anything more on the finance committee?
Nope, I'm done.
Just to the public safety committee. Chairwoman Spry.
All right, thank you. Item 8A, consideration to approving the issuance of a taxi license to Broadway Rickshaw. Can I ask Kelsey to kind of review that a little bit?
Now, Mayor and Council, we received a request from a company who wants to do a bike taxi here in Detroit Lakes. Took us a little bit to kind of review it, the request, but ultimately it looks like there's nothing in our ordinance that prohibits this type of activity. But however, we do think they would require a taxi license if they are for hire, so that they'd have to meet the requirements of our taxi licensing requirements in city code. In your packet, it includes some information on their application, and Carrie has on the screen here what they would potentially look like that they're proposing to bring. This individual does operate in a couple other cities and would like to bring it to Detroit Lakes.
Thank you. Any other comments from the committee? I think we've had everything covered there. Our group met yesterday and we moved to approve the taxi license.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the issuance of taxi license to Broadway Rickshaw. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item 8B, consideration to the first reading ordinance 515, use of cannabis in public, and I will defer to Kelsey and Charlie. Are any questions?
Mayor and Council, I'll start, and City Attorney Ramsey can add to it. We've been talking a little bit about the new cannabis statute that was passed by the legislature, and it's a large section of law. It's over 300 some pages, and one of the things we've talked about in there is there's a section in the statute that talks about a prohibition of public consumption. And we thought really the current language in the statute originally had us covered, but it was pointed out by the League of Minnesota Cities that really we need to have a local ordinance, put that prohibition in place to really make the consumption and use unlawful. So what we're trying to do here is to implement an ordinance that would basically make that public use as defined by the ordinance unlawful, and the violation would be a petty misdemeanor or administrative penalty. And just a little bit more, so starting August 1 in the state of Minnesota, we've had the lower potency hemp edibles and hemp-derived consumer products for a while now, but the cannabis products will be allowed to basically consume and possess within the state of Minnesota beginning August 1. So that's why we really want to have the first reading of the ordinance tonight. Tentatively throwing out a date of July 25th, maybe have a special council meeting and have a second reading, so we would have the ordinance in place by August 1st. I'll yield to the city attorney to add.
I don't have a lot to add. This is, we've drafted this proposed ordinance basically straight out of the statute. Essentially what it would do would be to make it a petty misdemeanor enforceable by our administrative penalties ordinance, which would allow you to set an administrative fine of up to $300. This would allow or prohibit the use, but not the possession, because the state does not allow us to prohibit possession, but does allow us to prohibit use of certain types of cannabis products in public places. And the cannabis products that it would allow us to prohibit public use for essentially are cannabis flower, which I think of as the leafy marijuana type stuff, or cannabis products. Those could be other things, but primarily what I used to think of as hashish. so a concentrated THC substance. And then also a number of other hemp-derived or cannabis-derived products, the definitions of which are a little bit obscure, so I'm not going to go through them. They don't have nice little labels for you. And those products we can prohibit the public use of in public places, and the statute then goes on to define what is and or is not a public place. So for instance, a residence is not a public place. So this would not prohibit somebody from sitting on their lawn or in their house. It doesn't have to be in their house, but on their property from using the product. It doesn't allow for instance, a person who is renting an apartment would have the ability to use the product because that is a private residence, but it's not generally acceptable or accessible to the public. However, the landlord in that situation would have the ability to put in their lease that these products are not usable by their tenants. Presumably, we would require them to have some posting of that. And if that situation were to occur, then that would likewise be able to be prohibited. And then it also allows for, it excludes from the public places certain things that are licensed events by certain businesses. I don't have a good example of that, but let's assume that there was some event where a cannabis vendor was going to be allowing outdoor use of this product in a public place, but we had already permitted the event to occur, then that would not be defined as a public place, but that has to be in either a enclosed or a specific event. So depending upon your view of this, essentially what this does is allows law enforcement to address the incidents where there would be obvious use of cannabis products in public places. Take any questions if there are. If you want me to get into those definitions, I will, but I'm not sure I can explain the scientific basis for it. So.
And this is basically just controlling the use. I had a lady that called me and she was concerned we were going to start selling it on August 1st. I said, that doesn't happen until 2025, but basically it's just controlling the use of it where you can have it. And you could have, was it up to 2 ounces in possession?
Well, once August 1st rolls around, you'll be able to possess 2 ounces of marijuana leaves, okay, so cannabis flower, and a larger quantity, perhaps the chief knows or Kelsey knows, but it's some larger quantity of the product, but not a significant. And it would be fair to say that the possession limits are for relatively small amounts. But there certainly are state prescribed possession limits. So the point there is not that you can possess whatever you want. The point there is that the state has defined what people can and cannot do. So that preempts us from making any other rules. But it does allow us specifically in the statute to address public use of those products.
Thank you, Jerry.
Wendy?
Thank you. I don't know that I have any questions. In my mind, reviewing this and listening to your explanation yesterday and today, it's very much like prohibiting the use of a can of beer on the beach. And we have that in our ordinance, and we have events on the beach where permitted use is available. And it's just, to me, it's kind of mirroring that kind of an approach.
I think that is a very accurate way of looking at this.
Any other questions? Our group met on this, and we are asking that this move forward.
Motion's been made and seconded to give first reading to ordinance 515 regarding the use of cannabis in public. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. First reading is given to ordinance 515. Any further items for the Public Safety Committee?
There are no further items.
Okay, we'll go to the Liquor Gambling Control Committee, and I believe Dr. Delaney is going to chair this evening.
We recently met on the Liquor Gambling Control Committee and had 3 items of mainly discussion. First item is review of the liquor store fund balance. And I think this is more of a discussion for Kelsey to take over and be cognizant of our fund balance for, in light of transfers for the city hall, et cetera. So I'll let Kelsey take over.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, actually, that was well said. You know, this is just a carryover discussion from last month. There was a discussion about maybe make a larger contribution to a project that the Boys and Girls Club has going on and an exhibit that the museum's going to have. And we just thought it'd be worthwhile to do a little bit of an analysis of where our liquor store fund balance is. It's very strong, obviously. We have a strong fund balance. We just heard that through our audit. You know, the only thing we note is we have a big commitment that we made about 9 months ago to fund half of the city hall improvements out of this fund. So that's going to take a pretty big hit on that fund balance. And so we just talked a little bit at committee about what our target fund balance should be. And again, I think what the staff was mentioning is we have a healthy fund balance, but maybe just keep caution as we have requests come and, you know, at least taking more out of that fund and just be a little more caution, so.
Okay. No action, though.
No action. Item B is a discussion regarding ordinance changes to section 702 liquor and wine licensing. Again, I'll refer to Kelsey.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, no action items tonight. We just had a discussion about the first one, item 9B. In your packet, there's a section of Minnesota statute, and there's 2 items that were highlighted that there's basically an opportunity for the city to issue liquor licenses to a convention center, and also for basically like a baseball, summer baseball organizations. That we currently don't have that language in our ordinance. So what we're going to do is come back next month with actually an ordinance proposal that would add those to our liquor ordinance. Item C was just a discussion about our section 704 in our city code, which is basically our prohibition about alcohol possession and consumption in public places. One of the issues we're running into is there's language in there about prohibition at convention centers, and it creates some problems with our theater and the DLCCC. And maybe there's a way we could streamline that with an ordinance change. Maybe remove that. It just helps streamline some of the permitting process for those convention centers that we have in town. So we'll come back next month with some ordinance proposal.
All right. Anything further from that committee?
No further items.
Chair, or Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Going to 5B and notice it's pointing out just those 2 buildings or entities. Can we add any more, or since that state statute, that is what it is?
Oh, I'm sorry, for 9B?
9B, yes.
Yeah, we pretty much have all these other items already included in our ordinance.
Okay.
But those 2 specific categories we don't currently have.
Gotcha.
So it'll just give us the option to be able to issue those licenses in the future.
All right. Mike, was there anything from public utilities that needed to come?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Anything from city staff that needs to be brought to the council?
I think the only thing I'd maybe add, Mayor, is I'll send out some emails and see if we can find a time for that special meeting date. We have the CGMC conference coming up on July 26th, so I thought maybe if we did the evening before the 25th, 4 o'clock, but I'll email and see where you guys are at with your schedules, and then we'd have that second reading of the cannabis ordinance and the admin penalties.
Very good. I don't have appointments for A, B, or C, but I do have a recommendation for the Detroit Lakes Becker County Airport Commission. Howard Hansen is going to be retiring and going off in September. I'd like to recommend that Ross Ganitsky be appointed to the commission. He comes highly recommended by Mark Hagan. So Ross Ganitsky, I could entertain a motion.
I was so moved for that, for Ross to be on the airport commission.
Okay. There's a second. Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Ross Ganitsky to fill the position vacated by Howard Hansen on the airport commission. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Information, the budget committee schedule is listed in the agenda, And our budget committee is, of course, our finance committee, but all the council is always welcome to participate in the budget committee meetings. The next joint governance meeting date is October 3rd, hosted by Becker County, and the balance of the 2023 city council dates are listed.
So Mayor, can I just add?
Yeah.
The budget meetings, we're currently planning on having those at the new police department.
Okay. All right. Matt, anything else to go to the order?
Two things, Mayor, and I'll make them brief. A, thank you to the city engineer for finally getting Westlake Drive open. Man, that's a blessing. That trail, I think people are all over that like ants. So it's great to see that. Two, along with that project, and I'd like to bring it to Public Works next month, or add it to the agenda, as you're heading south on Westlake Drive, it's 35, and it seems to bump up to 40 once you hit past the bowling alley. And especially if you're coming back into town, it's 35, to my understanding, all the way around the lake, but once you hit 22 from Long Bridge Road, it's 40 going into town, then you get 35 again. It would be great if we could just make that all 35 around that area, so if we could add that to Public Works to review next month, that would be appreciated.
We'll do it.
Thank you.
Dan?
The only thing I have is, Heidi said earlier today that we made our final payment on the police station today,
So 4 years instead of 8, right? Paid off?
Yes, it was supposed to be paid off in February of 2028, and today was the payoff date instead, so.
So hopefully at some point, our citizens and our property owners will see fit to pass another sales tax for more good stuff in Detroit Lakes. So,
Very successful.
Wendy?
Matt kind of stole my thunder. Westlake Drive is absolutely beautiful. I mean, the trees, the trail, the light, I mean, it's just a pleasure driving down there. So I just want to commend you on all the work that was done.
You've always got something to say.
Well, I do, and I want to put a plug in for the Housing Authority, because they have a rehab program with monies of $10,000 to $12,000 to help people in low-income housing that need to do repairs with special rates and so forth, and we still have that money available. And if you're someone out there that has a project, you don't know how you're going to be able to fund it, go down to Pleasantview Apartment, that's where the Housing Authority office is, talk to them about it, and they'll tell you how this program works. But it's a great program, and if you've got things that need to be fixed up, you don't know how you're going to do it, they can show you how easy it is. And so please go down there and talk to them. And we have, there's been a tax levy to give us that money, and like I said, you've got projects up to $10,000 to $12,000 they would like to see.
Very good. Mike?
I have nothing.
Oh, really? Okay. Sean? Jay?
No, I'm good.
The business of this council has come to a conclusion. The meeting's adjourned.